What if I was to tell you that Vegapunk had been deceiving everyone in the One Piece universe, from both the Straw Hats all the way up to the Gorosei? While that might very well be the case, and his final reveal might very well shake what we know about One Piece as it stands. But you might say Vegapunk has already had a massive reveal, the reveal of his flood, and that is true. The flood is going to be an immensely important aspect, but that's not what we're going to talk about. Instead, we're going to talk about something that Vegapunk has left behind that might very well make all the difference in the world. So Vegapunk is a character who has always been conceived as being the smartest person in the One Piece world, whether that was in the form of scientific advancement or in creating precautions. He even created multiple versions of himself so he could do things more efficiently, or oddly, kind of depends on which ones you're looking at. But nevertheless, he has shown his genius time and time again. Because of that, we've become to expect quite a lot from his character, and that expectation has certainly paid off in a variety of ways, from the fantastical creations on Egghead to the reveal of the flood that he's been studying behind the world government's back for years. And Vegapunk has largely been a public figure that very few people actually know about. They know his name, but very little of what he actually does. Hence how things like Punk Hazard ended up getting blamed on him, because not many people know him personally, since he's almost always secluded outside of the Navy Science Division. But that having been said, he has shown quite a bit of relationships outside, in particular with people that we know that are important, such as Dragon. But still, he has been moving towards a goal. Ever since the destruction of Ohara, he seems to have been very much working towards an end-all that he felt was very, very necessary. Even in order to accomplish that, he created his satellites. Now, the satellites are the first part of this theory because they are Vegapunk split into multiple bodies. Vegapunk felt that it was inefficient for him to be contained to one single body, and felt that it would be far more productive for him to have multiple. A consequence of this, perhaps not intentionally designed, was that each of his different Punk satellites ended up developing different personalities, whether they were evil side or greedy side or things like that. But all of that together, the satellites still functioned pretty much like him, just extending his range to multiple areas. And the limit on these copies has essentially never been fully established. For all we know, they could be islands away at a time and not suffer anything wrong. This led to the creation of a rather unique theory that I've seen several anime tubers now start to put out. The idea that there is actually a seventh secret satellite. This satellite would be intensely strong and perhaps harness his ego more than anything else. Now, to be fair, it's not like we don't know that Vegapunk has an ego. The man has created multiple things, even making his own giant laboratory on his home island. He definitely had one, though the current old man version definitely doesn't seem to retain much of it. Perhaps the side effect of the satellites, as they are part of him, but seem to embody more of his emotions. This led many to speculate that it's possible that his satellite was egotistical and left early to basically go and form his own destiny. This satellite is believed to be none other than Captain Eustass Kid. Now, I like this theory. It has some merit to it. Kid is a genius. He has oddly some resemblance to, Vegapunk's satellites, if you look at the odd way that they dress and the odd way he dresses, right down to goggles and stuff, as well as the genius that it takes to make full use of his particular devil fruit. The magnet fruit is strong on its own, but some of the constructs he makes with it way later on far exceed what I think an average person in the One Piece universe could do. I mean, keep in mind, people like Frankie and the Galley Law Company, they're supposed to be super rare, and they're the only people other than Vegapunk we've seen come close to cybernetic technology. So while it is entirely possible that, Kid essentially just developed this genius on his own, there's also a high probability that he shares a relation to Vegapunk. While I like the satellite theory, the one downside of this is that Oda did draw Kid as, a kid. Doing so when he essentially created, child versions of all the worst generation. This version of Kid had a wrench and looked like he was ready to build things. I find this quite interesting because while we don't know for sure, it seems unlikely that the satellites had any kind of childhood. More than likely they are animatronic replicas of him, i.e. robots, or they are forced-grown clones, and then are implanted with direct connections to his mind. There might be other explanations for this, but those are the two that seem most likely right now. The funny thing about this is that it doesn't really make sense that, we've seen the Seraphim. You can't really seem to have clones that are come out as children. and then just like let them run around like that. And there's no indication that other satellites were made in the same fashion. Yes, the Seraphim are the only other example of cloning, on Egghead at least. So bearing that in mind, there has been another less persistent theory, but one that I like, is that actually Kid is Vegapunk's son. There's some merit to this, the idea that Kid essentially might have run away at an early age. He seemed to have a creative spark as a child and was some kind of genius, then ended up becoming a pirate. This might also help explain the naming problem, as Captain Eustass Kid is really more of a moniker of his. The only name in there is Eustass. And then Kid is an interesting name because it's not really that much of a last name at all. Yes, I know there's a historical allegory for this, but maybe he just calls himself that because everybody called him like Junior Vegapunk or something. Bearing that in mind, the death of the actual Vegapunk, regardless of whether he's a satellite or his son, will have large ramifications. This might very well be the thing that brings him to the Straw Hats as a permanent ally, because he's essentially lost, quite a lot recently. His arm, his ship, other things as well. So it's entirely possible that he might very well end up joining the Straw Hats after the death of his father/progenitor, and his genius could very much be used in many of the things that we're going to see upcoming, whether it's dealing with the ancient weapons or the new weapons created by the world government. But what do you think about this theory?